My name is James Nord. I started 4Card, company that helps brands work with influencers. Who here knows what 4Card is? Look at that. That's okay. That's not bad. You guys all on 4Card? Okay. The rest of you should sign up. First, I'll tell you how I got here for just a bit, and then I think it'd be best to just take questions, because again, I could just throw a bunch of bullshit at you guys for 30 minutes, or I could actually have y'all ask me questions. I'm incapable of bullshitting either. That's half true. But what I mean is that I actually will answer the questions real. I'm not just going to be it's really important, just be yourself. That's the most important thing. Money doesn't matter. That's not true. There's a lot of you who are looking to get paid, and you're looking to make money off of this, and thank you, yeah, right? And here's the thing, it's hard to get real, actual answers about what you should be doing, what you should be charging, how you should work with brands, what's the right way to act, what's the wrong way to act. So we'll just do some questions. But first, how I got here, I started a Tumblr 9 years ago. Right, yeah. So 9 years ago, I started a Tumblr, mostly to let my parents know what I was up to so I didn't have to call them so much. And as the platform grew, my following grew, and I started taking photography more seriously and found myself as one of the most followed photographers on Tumblr, in 2010, 2011, something like that. Hold on, I'm gonna keep drinking. I was one of the most followed photographers on Tumblr. I wanted to shoot women's fashion specifically, but I was from Georgia. I didn't know anyone in the fashion industry, and I used to just email, I'd find the CEO of Prada's email, and I'd be Prada CEO, my name is James Nord. I have a Tumblr blog that 30,000 people follow. That was a big deal back then. 30,000 people follow this blog, and I think I should be shooting for Prada. Please let me know when you'd like to meet up. So I obviously never heard back from anyone ever. But I did that for 6 months, and I was like, okay, this isn't working. I met this guy named Rich who was at Tumblr, and he was the guy who was putting Tumblr Fashion Weeks on. He ended up being my co-founder at 4Card. Little known fact, Rich was the person that brought Tavi to her first Fashion Week. So he really kind of started the whole blogger thing at Fashion Week. He had a company that paid for Tavi to go to Fashion Week her first time, and there was all those stories 13-year-old is sitting front row. Remember? I don't remember because I was 22 and didn't give a shit, but that was something that was happening. So I met up with Rich, and I was I want to. He was getting all these brands on. Fashion now was so much different than it was 5 years ago. Certainly different than it was 10 years ago. The fashion brands used to, they were kind of predicated on mystery, right? They didn't speak to their customer. They shot 4 times a year. They put those advertisements in Vogue and Harper's or wherever they wanted to put them. But they certainly weren't having a conversation with their customers. And so Rich was getting all of these brands onto Tumblr, which was really cool because all of a sudden Oscar de la Renta and Marc Jacobs and Kate Spade, J. Crew, all these brands had blogs, and it was really the first social network they were on before Instagram, because Instagram didn't exist. But so I thought maybe I could shoot for some of those brands. I am fucking rambling, so I'm going to speed it up. But I reached out to him. He set me up with, hello? Is this working? Yep, okay. He set me up with Oscar de la Renta, so I shot something for Oscar. And then I shot more for Oscar. I became Oscar de la Renta's house photographer. And then I was in Dubai shooting some fucking yacht race. And then I was in Cannes doing some other cool stuff. And life really changed pretty quickly. And this was early in the blogger influencer space. There was no money changing hands at the time. Brands weren't really paying influencers. Influencers, that term didn't even exist. So Tumblr bloggers or bloggers, brands weren't paying them. But I kind of saw that Rich and I both saw that I wasn't being hired because I was some great photographer. Because if you follow my Instagram, which you definitely should, at James Nord, feel free to follow that as well. I need all the help I can get. They were following me because I had this big Tumblr following, and they tried to reach that. So I said okay, there is something happening here. Brands are leveraging people for something other than just their content. They need access to these networks, which maybe they don't understand that well, or you guys know, brands throw their advertising imagery into Instagram and it doesn't really work, right? So like the reason bloggers and all y'all are so important is that you can create that kind of authentic content that they're actually incapable of producing because they're used to hiring a photographer for $100,000 and getting top models, and they control the lighting and all these things, and it just doesn't look authentic. So we saw that and we said, okay, we should try and start a company that can help these brands find more influencers to work with. So now we have 13,000 influencers. We've got both, like I was here for JC and Kat were up here earlier. You guys saw that? That was good, right? They're great. So they're both on 4Card. So we got 13,000 influencers and maybe 300 brands that use the site. And I think we'll pay out $4 or $5 million this year to influencers, just in payments, which is awesome. We've had a lot of our influencers be able to quit their jobs because of the money we're giving them. And we've done a lot of really amazing things, but there's the other 12,000 influencers who aren't making a lot of money. And those are the people that I try and speak to more and more about, like, how can you get there, right? Because it's really frustrating to be like, okay, I'm at 10,000 or 5,000 or 20,000 or 50,000, and I'm trying to get to a place where I can turn this into a job, where I can quit the job that I have that I don't love and do this full time. There's not a lot of advice about how to get there, right? And as sweet as it is, just saying like, be authentic isn't the best actionable advice. Is like how you can actually grow this business. So I think I'm partially up here, like Tim and I, again, we do this thing, Drink with James, and I just kind of like answer influencers' questions, and I can stand up here and just answer some of y'all's questions, and we can just like riff on that now. How much time do we have? Let me see. We got 15 minutes. So I can either go into a spiel about the kind of process of working with brands and how I think you should think about it, or I can start answering questions. What do you guys want? Tell me. Both. Okay, so I'll do a very fast thing. So the way I think about sales and about you guys selling brands, especially if you haven't worked for them, it's like a 4-step process. And if I've been drinking for a little while, so if I can remember all 4 steps, like props to me. But step number 1 is relationship, right? You have to create a relationship with a brand if you are going to work with them. So I know y'all are hustlers. That's why you're sitting here. That's why you're at a conference trying to learn. But sending a brand an email like I did when I was young and dumb and less attractive, and saying, hey, here's everything about me. Do you want to work together? Here's how much it will cost. Let me know, is a terrible idea. That's never going to work. Because they don't know who you are. They know nothing about you. So the first thing you need to do in a relationship with a brand is get a relationship with that brand, right? And so reaching out to a brand completely cold and saying, hey, you've never heard of me, I want you to give me money now, please, is not going to work. I implore you to, first of all, start with the brands. I think actually JC said it. Is she in here? There she is. There's JC. She'll back up literally everything I say. I think she said it when she was talking that she starts by saying like, oh, if I like Tory Burch, I want to work with Tory Burch. So if there's brands that you are already talking about, like that's where you start, and you say, you find their social media manager. That's not that hard. You say, Gap social media manager or whatever the brand is. There's a few services you can use. One I love is called data.com. Data.com. It basically has email addresses of every person at every company that you could ever want. So you can find that person and you can say, hey, here's 10 links to all of the posts that I've done about you over the last year. I'm a massive fan of the brand. I love you guys so much. I just wanted you to know. I'd love to jump on the phone or something like that. And if you can get them to meet you or to get on the phone with you, awesome. Even if you can get them to respond to an email, that's like step 1. You have a relationship. If you can't, it's important to understand that what you guys do, if you are bloggers, is you sell clothes, right? You're advertisers, essentially. So you got to look at what the brand is doing and what are the activations they're working on. If if it's 10 years ago and it's Old Navy and they're pushing performance fleece, I don't know if they still have Old Navy performance fleece, but let's just say they did because that's the last Old Navy ad I remember. Then you would email them and say hey, I know you guys are doing a performance fleece thing, and I want to get involved. I have this thing, is there any anything specific you would want me to say? I'm gonna do a post anyway, but is there any key messaging that you want me to include in the post? So it's important, again, to understand what the brand's goals are, because you pitching your crazy, awesome idea that you have, if it doesn't fit into what they're pushing, then you're just going to put them in a weird position of being like, oh, that's a cool idea, but has absolutely, literally nothing to do with what we're trying to do. So your job, especially early on, I think, is to try and make their jobs easier. So understand the campaigns that they're working on and try and get into those. That's great. And if you can get them on the phone or get a coffee with them, even better. A lot of these brands do like to meet the people that they work with, so start there. So that's number one. Number two, I would say the thing that's important is validation. If you do reach out cold to someone, or if they come across you, instantly, just the way our brains work, people try and dismiss you, right? You meet someone and you're like, all right, I got 10 seconds to figure out why I hate this person, and I think they're dog shit, and I don't have to listen to them anymore. So you instantly need to validate yourself. So that means I think it's important to think about the kinds of brands that you are working with, and your goals. If you want to work with Nike, and that's your dream, then when Nike comes to your profile, they shouldn't see Puma, Reebok, Adidas, Asics as the last 4 posts, right? You need to validate yourself, and I think if you're going to do free things, try and do free things for the brands that will validate you, right? There's those brands that if they work with people, it means that you're someone, and then there's those brands that pay. And I think it's great to try and build relationships with those brands that maybe won't pay, but if somebody sees that you're connected with them, it'll be like, oh, I work at this other brand, I respect that brand. If that brand respects that person, then they've already done the kind of legwork I don't have need to think about. Does that make sense? Right? I'm sure you guys see it. It's like when you land on an influencer's page and they have 300,000 followers, and it changes the way you think about their content, because it's like, oh, they've built a following. They're kind of validated. I don't have to go through as much and be like, do I actually want to follow this person? You might say oh, it seems like something is happening here. I'm just going to follow them and see if I like it. So validation is key. The next is kind of what I talked about before, which is opportunity. Again, understanding what brands are working on is really important. And if you sent that brand, your 4 posts before and say, hey, I just want to let you know what I'm doing. I'm pushing this. I'd love to have a relationship with you. Let's talk. And they don't get back to you, I would say the next email should be when you see that they're pushing something. Be like, hey, I see you're working on this campaign. I'd love to try and be involved. Here's an idea I have about that. I see you just launched sunglasses. Weird, I'm going to Hawaii next week. Could I get 4 pairs of these sunglasses and shoot them for you? For the social media person there, or the marketing person, you just made their job so much easier, because they might be thinking, fuck, I need to push these sunglasses, and I don't know who I'm going to work with. And then you're like, boom, I'm going to Hawaii, because that's my life, and I will shoot this for you for free. Just send me the glasses, their job is so much easier. You don't reach out and say oh, hey, I'd love to work with you in some way, at some point, in some capacity. It's like someone coming up to you at a bar and being like, hi, could I get your number? I'd like to potentially hang out romantically or not at some point in the future. If you're interested or not, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure that I'm interested. But that doesn't work. So have a plan and say what you want, which you can say, James, you just told me 5 minutes ago to not email them everything you want to do. And I would say, I'm drinking, so whatever. But no, but you've already built a relationship. You've already sent that email to say hi, this is who I am, this is what I do. Would you like me to do some of that for you at some point? I love you guys. So the other thing is, I think that we get a lot of questions on is just, when do you start charging? Good question. I had JC on the show at some point. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I think her advice, which is probably more pertinent than mine, was to start charging when people start offering you money. That's a good indication of when you should start to think about charging. I think at the beginning, once people start offering you money, you shouldn't be trying to make money off every deal. Again, you have to look at that like validation versus compensation thing, which I totally just made that up right now and sounds awesome. So validation versus compensation. If very cool brand that has a big following reaches out to you and says, I'd love to work with you, don't come back and say, yeah, $300, you know? Maybe it makes more sense to be like, I would also love to work with you. I'll do 3 Instagrams. Will you repost one on your platforms? Because like, is a regram from Old Navy or Victoria's Secret worth more than $300? It definitely is, especially if you look at someone who has like, let's say a brand has 500,000 followers, right? You do very rough math and you say 500,000 followers, that Instagram would be worth $6,000 or $7,000. So if they're gonna repost you on their account and you are giving up a free $7,000 post for $300 from a brand, long-term decision, like, that's not a great decision, right? So you're trying to grow. We look at the level of when people start making like real money. I think it's generally around 50,000 in total reach, because like at 50,000 of total reach, like 50,000 on Instagram, you're probably making $500 to $700 a post when you do sponsored posts. So you think about, okay, if I can do 1 or 2 of those a week, I can start to make real money. So anything under that, yeah, sure. When you can get money, you should be trying to, but I would think more about growth and about leveraging brands that can help you grow. Do you have something to say, JC?
How do people know how much to charge?
Yeah, that's tough. How do you know what to charge? So very rough math of like baseline, where am I at? You can just use a $12 CPM. So take your following, divide it by, yeah, so it's cost per 1,000 impressions. So take your following, divide it by 1,000, multiply it by 12, and that's about it. So that gives you a baseline of like, if a brand offers you something or if you are pitching a brand, if you're in the ballpark. So again, 100,000 divided by 1,000 is something, times 12. They do, yeah. I mean, you want good engagement. I think if you have a brand reach out and says like, I pay per like or something like that, I just be like, I'm not super interested in working with you, They should just want to work with you. Engagement percentages vary across a following. At 500,000, I think you should be looking for 0.7 to 1% as an average, but at 10,000, you should be probably looking at more like 2% as an average. If you have 100,000 followers and you're getting 500 likes on a photo or 200 likes, like you might want to I don't know what you should do, but stop buying followers. But yeah, I think most people if you're growing, and again, growth rate's something to look at as well. You should be between 1% and 5%. That's like a normal, good, organic growth rate. If you're growing, your engagement should be pretty standard and solid. I think this is a good time to just transition into questions. What do you guys think? Yeah? Good. All right, let's rock and roll. Who's got one? Don't be shy. Or maybe you're tired. Maybe you have no questions. Yeah. Data.com, yeah, DATA.com. It's like $1 a contact or something. Or you can upload your own contacts and you get points. And they never know where you got it, which is great. I mean, a lot of 4Cards growth is just cold outreach. My salespeople email 200 brands a week. And it's a hustle in the beginning, you get to a level where you have a lot of brand relationships and you have a big following, you don't have to do outreach. But if you're not at that level yet and you're just sitting back waiting, waiting for people to come to you, just think about how hard it would be for someone to find your account, follow it, get invested enough to want to work with you, then have a campaign come up that makes sense to work with you, then reach out to you and ask if you want to work with them, and then negotiate a deal and work with you. That's a lot of work for a brand person, and especially with the amount of people who have 10, 20, 30, 50,000 followers. So I would encourage you to set a goal of outreach a week to say, even, when I was shooting, I used to just be 10, just 10 companies a week that I'm going to reach out to. But it's not that hard, and you could reach out to 10, 50, 100 companies. Go look at top 500, fashion brands by size and start pulling contacts and emailing them.
I feel like now brands are working more with networks, so that when you reach out, they don't really want to work with individuals, which is network.
They could. Yeah, I mean, we're one of them, but we don't want to own the brand relationship. So I think regardless, the brand, their best case scenario is they own the relationship, especially with the up and comers. Again, I sit in a decent amount of meetings with these brands, from big mass brands to Chanel, and they're not like, tell me how I can work with Kiara better. They don't care about that, because that's easy. You pay her $100,000, that's how you work with her. End of story. What they want to know is how do I know who's up and coming? How do I work with? I want to find smaller influencers. I want to find the next big person. There is that class of people who are growing and who are coming up, and it can be frustrating to be part of that, because it's I'm not getting any of these deals. But know that those brands, they are actively searching smaller influencers out.
If you're working with brands on sponsored content and you're giving them good exposure, but they're not getting sales, how would you work on that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the brand, right? We do a lot of work for Jaguar. Do you think we've ever sold a Jaguar? No, absolutely not. Do you think that, when JC was talking earlier about her Chanel bag, you think she posts a Chanel bag and 30 people go and say, I've never seen a quilted Chanel bag in my life. I'm going to go buy this right now for $7,500. No, there are brands that lend themselves to sales, right? But if you're working with emerging brands, it's the same thing. Let's say you work with some menswear brands that's making leather bags, and they're is that your backpack?
Yeah.
That's a nice looking backpack. Let's say it's $300. I've never fucking seen it before, right? You post it, I'm not gonna be cool, never seen this bag before, buying that $300 bag today. That doesn't happen, at least not for me. That's not how I shop. So, if it's an emerging brand, I think it's important to be able to talk to them and say that's not how it works. What we're doing now is you're building exposure, you're building some name recognition. So in a year, after I've seen that bag 10 times, and I think, you know what I want? I need a backpack that's not a kid's LL Bean bag with my fucking initials on it. I'll be I saw that bag once, and I want to buy that bag. So it's tough, because you're seeding, what I would say is seeding desire. The reason Chanel and Jaguar work with us is that you make the decision, and I hope you guys agree with me, you make the decision to buy a Chanel bag 10 years before you buy it, right? And that when you buy that bag, that's a moment, you're I've made it. When I get my first big job, or I get my first bonus check, I'm gonna go buy that bag that I've wanted since I was 15. So those brands, now that Vogue and Harper's aren't as popular, they need to be working with influencers to make sure that 15, 16, 18, 20-year-old women are seeing that bag over and over again. So when they turn 30, when they get the bonus, they also think of Chanel, not Saint Laurent.
For the sake of another comment or another
Right.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. If I was devil's advocate, if you were a brand and you said that to me, I'd be yeah, I influence influencers. Then they're gonna go and talk about this to all their followers. So it's who watches The Watchmen? I didn't see that movie, but I've heard that. But yeah, if you are influencing people who are influencing other people, nothing better than that. I love music, and one of my favorite things to do is hear about who did Keith Richards look up to, and listen to that music, and then who influenced that guy, who influenced that guy, and who influenced that guy. So I actually would argue that if your phone is built up of bloggers, even better, because they're going to take that and spread it much wider than you could with just your following. Yeah.
You mentioned that often brands are looking for the next up-and-coming blogger.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're looking at the smaller bloggers, what are they really looking for? Could you just give a little bit more color around that?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I think they're looking for a unique viewpoint, or a niche view of some sort. More and more with social now, you can build 15 different customer profiles. You'd be I want the Southern preppy girl, and I want the uptown girl, and I want the down, and they can kind of fill all of those things. So, I think the less vanilla you can be, the better, and the more niche and interesting you can be, the better. But I I mean, they're looking for the same thing. They're looking for someone interesting. Brands, when they work with you, they're essentially saying, like, tell my story. And if you think about if somebody was going to tell your story, like, you would want the most interesting person possible who was going to tell it in a really cool way and make you look awesome, right? And that's really what they're looking for. When we work with some brands, and, we've done a lot of work for Abercrombie this year, right? Who's been, like, going through a big transition. For them, again, like, they need to tell that brand story in a really interesting and unique way, because just getting, like, preppy guys with, like, perfect nipples and shaved chests to, like, wear their clothes isn't, like, cutting it anymore, So yeah, I think as like weird and different you can be, the better generally. What are we doing on time here? Okay, we're running over, but you guys are having fun. So we want to do like 2 more. That works. Okay.
How do you know who to reach out to at a brand? Like you mentioned, reaching out to the social media person if it's to get product. Let's say you want to go to one of their events or even fashion week.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know who to?
Yeah, I think PR or social usually. I mean, yeah, we have this email that like we write where we send it to somebody. Sometimes on purpose we send it to somebody who we know doesn't do influencer marketing. And we say, hey, I'm looking for the person at your company that handles influencer marketing. Could you connect me? So now all of a sudden, dude in finance who gets 3 emails a day is like, oh yeah, I know that person. And then they connect you to that person. And now that person is forced to answer the email because it's coming from one of their colleagues. So that that actually works really well. So sometimes go to somebody that isn't the right person and ask them, oh, I'm just looking for the person who handles this. Like, I don't know where to look. Could you help me? It's super easy for them.
Go on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah, data.com, all those things work. Or slide in the DMs, I don't know if you guys do that. That's worked for me. One more? What do you think? Who's got one? Last one. Let's make it good. Yeah.
So if you've been sending the emails that you suggested to social media coordinator, public relations department, and you've shown that you have a relationship with the brand and you've posted several times, and you've sent an email and you haven't gotten a response, like what should you be doing to try to elicit some sort of response? Or is there something you could be doing wrong or saying? How do you know that you're doing something wrong?
Yeah.
Operating in a bubble.
I mean, I think, 5 emails in like the course of a month and a half or 2 months,
Very aggressive.
but that's totally fine.
Oh, okay.
You ever seen Wolf of Wall Street where he's like, I want you to take Steve Madden and jam it down your client's throat until they choke? I love that movie. But anyway, for me, I get a decent amount of email, and a lot of times, it's not that I don't want to respond, it's just you haven't caught me at the right time yet. So I wouldn't email them every week, but if you legitimately have something to say, I don't see a reason to stop emailing someone until they say, please stop emailing me. Honestly, they haven't said no yet. So if they haven't said no, it's a soft yes, so I think you could just, I think you can keep going. If they say no, just back off, But if they haven't said no yet, then why stop? Maybe you just haven't caught them at the right time.